Welcome to the Idaho Business Podcast, the only Idaho podcast focused on providing profits for Idaho people. If you love our state and love small business, you are in the right place. We interview local legends, learn business, and have way too much fun doing it. You're listening to the Idaho Business Podcast with your friend, host, and all-around great guy and owner of New Clean Commercial Cleaning, Spencer Ward.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Idaho Business Podcast. We are here today with David Worley. He is up to go in the campaign again for the mayor position in the city of Pocatello. So we're happy to have him on board. Before we get to him, we do have to say we are sponsored by Sensations. These guys are located in Twin Falls and Pocatello, and they do a phenomenal job of their services of your tanning, your massages, everything you need to look and to feel good. If you go in to the Idaho Business Podcast.com, click on their logo or their name, you can get their offer that they have for us. And what the offer is right now is if you call them and mention the podcast, you get your first tanning for free. So, David, if you want to get a little more glow to you before the elections, there you go. Okay, well, David, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Perfect. So after graduating, he's a Pocatello native, graduated Pocatello High School. He went on to get his bachelor's degree in government and international politics from George Mason University in Virginia. He also went on to get his Master's of Arts degree in statecraft and national security affairs from the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C. Not to mention that he's been deployed three different times. Two of those times, three times in the Middle East, and two of those times in Iraq. So definitely serving our country. He's a veteran and just all around good old American. So did I get anything wrong, David?
No, I'd just like to point out that I did the first 2 years of my bachelor's degree at Idaho State University. So
perfect.
Half and half there. Half here and
there
half
we
over
go.
there.
All right. So you are a Bengal as well. So that's good to know.
Yes.
All right. Well, David, there's got a few candidates right now running for the seat of mayor in the city of Pocatello. If I could talk today, what's going to make you so different from what we've experienced in the past, and maybe who's also running for mayor right now?
Yeah, so I think it's important when we're talking about differences among the different candidates. So obviously the budget, the city's spending, taxes, it's an issue every election, but this election, it's a pretty big deal. I think that my proposals are different from the other two. If I describe kind of the three positions right now, the mayor is basically saying that things are fine, no need to change course. He's the incumbent, and of course, that's kind of his position. Chris Stevens is saying that, we need reform, and she wants to see the city spend its money differently, more efficiently. I'm really the only one who's really aggressively saying that, not only need to be more efficient with our money, but that overall Pocatello is overtaxed as a population. And I think there's some pretty clear metrics that show that, and this is impacting not just, individual citizens, but also businesses. So if you look at the city's levy rate, when you compare it to cities of the same size, like Coeur d'Alene, Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, Caldwell, we actually have the highest levy rate compared to our peers in the state. We even have a higher city levy rate than Boise, and which I think it's a bad indicator. And then when you look at even just the size of the budgets, and how much our property tax ask is per citizen, in that group of cities I mentioned, it's only Idaho Falls of our peers who pays a little bit more than we do, but they have 10,000 more people, and they have a much more business density. They have twice as many business accounts as we do, for their taxes. And also when you look at all the, what, say again?
Oh, I was going to say also higher medium income, household income.
Oh yeah, I was just going to bring that up, is that among all those cities, not only do we have the highest rate, but we also have the lowest median household income. Mm-hmm. So I think those are all clear indicators that we are taxing beyond what our people can support and have taxed beyond our tax base. And if you look at it like on a graph, the past 10 years of job growth and population growth, we've really only added about 3,000 more people in the past 10 years and about that same number of jobs. But the city's budget has increased by, almost $25 million. So I think that it's pretty clear that the rate of the growth of the city's government and the level we tax our people is just beyond what we can support. And so I'm the only one in the race who's saying that not only do we need to be more efficient with our money, but overall, we need to reduce the city's spending so we can reduce the taxes and provide tax relief for the city and businesses of Pocatello.
Okay. So is there a kind of a clear-cut way that you've kind of seen from what our city's spending money on to eliminate some waste and still keep some of the programs and things that keeps or if I may say, adds value to the citizens of Pocatello?
Oh, absolutely. So I think that, again, one of the reasons why it's important to look at, other cities, not that every other city is doing it better than we are in all categories, but when you look at, for example, Coeur d'Alene provides many of the same services that we provide our people, but they do it with a budget of this past fiscal year of $109 million as opposed to $131 million. And they did it with, almost 150 fewer full-time employees. So I think that that's a clear indicator when you compare us to a lot of other cities that it is possible to do the same types of things with fewer resources. So, and let's be right up front about it. Anyone who's in business knows, I used to be a small business owner myself, owned a small ammunition company. One of the biggest drivers of cost is personnel. So the more full-time employees you have, that's just going to be a huge cost driver. And if you look at our city budget and you look at the general revenue fund specifically, over 75% of the general revenue fund is paid in employee wages and benefits. And then when you go to the macro budget, all funds included, all forms of money, it still takes up a little bit over 40% of the budget. So I think that shows that, we just have a city government that's too big and is not effective at providing those services the same way other cities are. So how do you reduce that? I think that there's room for privatization of some city functions. So, you look at other cities and they don't have, as many full-time lawyers we have. They contract out some of the legal work. So you put guys on retainers. So you're just paying for the lawyer when you need their help instead of having a full-time position. Our planning section in our city is much larger and has grown over the years compared to other cities. We used to have 3 people in that department. Now we have close to 20. So I think there's just been this growth over time that because there hasn't been someone trying to look at how to reduce or maintain the size of the city government, it's just been allowed to grow, which is what governments naturally do when they're left unchecked.
Yeah, they like to do that for sure.
Yes, every government agency, and every department wants to empire build, and it's a bigger budget. I spent, my entire, military career in the Army. I've seen that in every that's just the way government is. So it takes an active leader to cut that back. And if you're not doing that, it'll just keep growing. And so there's all sorts of things like that. If you go into the organizational structure of the city, sometimes you'll see supervisors that are supervising 2 or 3 people. And you go, well, wait a minute, we are too administratively top heavy. And then you look at other departments and you start to ask questions like, okay, we have this huge fleet maintenance shop that costs a lot of money. Well, the city used to contract that out to local businesses. So local mechanic shops and car dealerships, service the fleet, our vehicle fleet. But now we try to do that all internally, and it is actually proven to be way more expensive. So I think that there's room not just to slash and burn, but that we can provide the same services and functions just in a more efficient way that requires fewer employees. And also we'll give that money back to the community. So I would rather, instead of locking all those tax dollars in the city government, hire out local businesses to do as many things as it makes sense to do, because that way we keep those tax dollars circulating in our business community instead of locking them up in a government agency.
I'm sure business owners like to hear that,
I hope so.
Especially right now with the some of the hits people have taken during the pandemic. Some have prospered and some have just really it's been tough. So,
and that's another major component of my campaign. So I think that government at every level has a role to protect the rights of their people, and that includes the right of the business owner to run his business. So if you look at what we did during the pandemic, I think the business shutdowns were incredibly unjust, unconstitutional, and even at some level immoral. So my favorite example to use, I think it illustrates this point really clearly, is we can tell a business that they're non-essential, such as the barber, right? You say everybody can grow their hair out. It's a big
Yep.
deal. Let your inner hippie come out. It's okay. I can cut my own hair. It doesn't look pretty, but I can do it. So
Yep.
we can tell people the haircut is not essential. But is that true for the barber? Absolutely not.
Exactly.
Because the barber cutting hair is how he puts food on his table. So no business is really non-essential. Every business is essential because every job puts food on someone's table.
You're exactly right. When I first initially started hearing that phrase, it made me sick to my stomach. At that time, we were still the Pocatello Business Podcast. We started that way, and it just made me sick, thinking, what, how can they tell some business owners that they're essential and some aren't, when they all have families to feed and shelter to put over their heads? It's just, that's one thing I was completely against. That people should all have the right to choose, and if they want to mask, they mask. If they don't want to mask, they don't mask. So.
Yeah, exactly. And also, people have different risk tolerance levels in their lives, but everybody should be able to make those decisions for themselves. Don't tell me I can't go out to eat or I can't go to this store or that store. Let me make that decision as the customer, and let the business owner make that decision as the business.
Exactly.
If a business wants to go to all takeout and they think that their business can survive that way, then go for it. But if you know that your business can't survive on that model, then you should have the right to keep it open. And whatever customers are willing to go there should have the right to do so. So I think that when we look at those types of policies, people say, well, that was done by the governor, or that was done by the federal government, the CDC. What does the city have to do with that? Well, I think that's where we have to start asserting ourselves as a local government and saying, look, I have the duty as the mayor, or the city has a duty to protect the rights of its people. So one of the firm commitments I've given is that if we ever try and do another lockdown, they come out with a new variant, or as we get into the winter months, there's some new things they want to impose on us. My commitment is pretty clear. Not only not impose those things on the city, not going to enforce them, I want to allow them to be enforced. So the Idaho Department of Health wants to come into our city to shut down our businesses. I will kindly have our police department escort them to the edge of the city limits and tell them to go someplace else. Because we cannot allow, I've talked to so many business owners who said, if we have another shutdown, it will destroy their business. They barely survived the last one, and they won't survive another one.
Yeah, I've talked to many business owners, and I feel for all of them. That's tough, and it's a tough thing, because it's nothing that our community or our as a nation as a whole we've ever experienced. And I think it definitely could have been handled in a different manner, that we all could have stayed in business, and we all could have still been in it together, and in a non-judgmental way, where I feel like right now there's so much hate in the world, and we're all looking at each other to judge each other on what you're doing and what you're not doing. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, I think, is the biggest problem in our nation, is just the level of hate. And if we, not to say like a church answer or a primary answer, but literally the lack of love in our nation, and we're so divided. But if we could just see people as people, all trying to make a living, all trying to do our best for our families, and stop thinking of, oh, you're not wearing a mask. Oh, you are wearing a mask. Well, I hate you. I hate you. No, it's just crazy. So anyways, we're all trying to do the best for ourselves.
And I think that what I've noticed just everywhere, if you look at how this has been done throughout the country and throughout the world, I think that we should have learned by now that forcing people to do things actually creates more division. So are there always going to be people out there who think, no, I want the government to force people to do what I think is right? There's always going to be people out there like that. And, we can't really fix that. But whenever you try and use the force of government to take away people's freedom, it automatically creates more division and intensifies the conflict. So if we want to actually see our community come back together, I think we have to go back to respecting everybody's right to choose how to live their lives, whether that's with masks or the vaccine mandate, the same thing. No one should live in fear of losing their job based on their personal medical decision.
exactly.
And that's another thing I've advocated as a policy solution. I think we need to have locally too. Is I see no reason why we couldn't have a local ordinance that prohibits businesses from discriminating based on vaccination status. And I think that would be why wait for Washington? Why wait for Boise? Why wait for a court somewhere to do this when we have people in our city whose livelihoods are being threatened right now? And that's a mentality, that's a shift I want to see happen in local government, where instead of waiting for someone else to fix our problems, we just start fixing our problems here.
Yeah, I like that. Well, to go ahead with your what you just said about governments forcing. The same thing goes on the other hand, like not the other hand, but I just read of China, for example, with this whole cryptocurrency thing going on. They said, hey, all citizens of China, it's illegal for you to buy Bitcoin. What do you think happened? Yeah, they all got VPNs.
They bought
and they bought so much Bitcoin. So exactly.
I just wish I knew when the Chinese government is going to do it, then I would have bought more Bitcoin.
Seriously. So it's just exactly what you said, though. If you force something on anyone, they're gonna go on the opposite side. So.
Yep.
Well, perfect. Well, let's get on to the business side. This is a business podcast, of course.
No
what's some of your plans to bring? Because I'm sure we all read the meager growth in Pocatello article. What's some of the plans that you have in place that you would really take us to the next level and bring more growth to our city?
So the taxation issues kind of lead into that discussion. So I think that if you're a business and you're looking for a place to set up, why would you go to a city that has a higher tax rate than other places you could go? So that's part of the equation. Another part of the equation, I think, is the regulatory burden that Pocatello places on its businesses. And this is something where it's kind of hard to say, okay, here are the 27 lines in the city code that need to be changed. But when you talk to a lot of business owners in Pocatello, they have frustration over not only the type of enforcement we have with regulation, but the lack of uniformity. There's a lot of inconsistency. I'll give you one of my favorite examples from the Historic Preservation Commission in Old Town, which is I get it, you want it to look a certain way, but at the same time, there's some insane things they've done. So I talked to a business owner who, was going to restore a building years ago, and he had figured out how to do it all with brick, so it looked like the original brick the building had. But instead, he was forced to use this kind of cheap stucco material instead, the stuff you kick it and it makes a hole in the wall, because he couldn't buy bricks that were made the same year the building was built. I don't even know how you do that. I don't know how you'd ever get those bricks. So of course he didn't do it in brick, and it would have looked nicer. It would have actually met the mission of the Historic Commission better. But just a lot of weird stuff like that happens in Pocatello. I talked to another guy who is renovating a building down there, and he had to actually lay off a portion of his crew because they were at a point of construction where they couldn't go any further with that element of the crew until the city came out and did their code inspection. And they didn't come out for days after days, and so he had to lay off some guys and then bring them back. So those guys were out of work for a week. And just talked to a lot of people who said, Pocatello is one of the most difficult places to do business. And I think that, people want to argue that. I say, well, then why do we keep seeing businesses come here for a few years and then they'll leave and go to Blackfoot or Idaho Falls? Or why do we see a lot of businesses when they come in, kind of scout out Southeast Idaho, they'll choose a lot of places other than Pocatello. And I think that's one of the big reasons is we developed a reputation where, if you set up shop here, the other thing we do is that we have been multiplying the fees we make businesses pay on almost any transactions, just over the years. And I think part of that is we're looking for supplemental revenue without raising taxes directly. This goes back again to the city's, fiscal problems we're having. Mm-hmm. And then I've also talked to a lot of business owners, especially again in the downtown area, where they say, some of the things that Pocatello has aren't really that burdensome, like to get a permit. I think it was like $20 or $30 or something to get a permit to have a concert or a block party. But when you submit your permit request, you have to walk it through the entire process yourself. If you don't call the next person whose desk it's on throughout that entire 6-person process or whatever, it won't get done. You can't just submit your request and know that's going to come back to you in 3 or 4 business days. You have to personally walk it through the process.
Well, that's not good.
It's not going to happen. So I think that there's just a lot of these things that make it difficult to do business in Pocatello that we need to clean that up so that business owners know when they come here, or if you already have a business, you can expand without having the city get in the way.
Sure.
Now, as far as bringing in new businesses, I think one of the problems we've had is we're trying to take a round peg and put it in a square hole. So how many times have we been promised that we're going to bring some sort of big tech company to Pocatello, an Amazon or a Google Center or something like that? And, I think that would only not be it would be a bad idea because one, those companies tend to bring their own people, bring a lot of transplants, don't necessarily hire our people. And then those companies also come with values that don't necessarily match the values of our city. So I think we should go
Sure.
and we should find companies that both match our values and also match our city's natural assets. So for example, we're still a railroad transportation hub. We sit on an interstate that connects, Canada to Mexico. We have an Idaho State University technical program that churns out, machinists and other sorts of, people with technical degrees, dozens of them every year. And they have to go and find other places to work because there's no jobs for them in Pocatello. So why not try and bring manufacturing back to Pocatello?
Sure.
One of the things that the pandemic showed us is that we're over dependent on foreign products. And I think that if you look at some trends we've been seeing recently in the country, there's the beginning of a renaissance in American manufacturing as more people want to look at how do we domesticate production of things. And I think that the future of Made in America should include Made in Pocatello because we have a community that has some very natural advantages for those types of industries.
You're exactly right.
That's kind of my vision for, what type of businesses we should be trying to attract.
Yep. Okay. I like it. Yeah. For a geographical standpoint, like it just makes sense. We're so central, to be able to do business, like you said, with the freeways, the intersections of the freeways. It just makes sense to bring more business into Pocatello to distribute throughout Idaho, throughout everywhere, so there should be more growth. So.
But yeah, I think that if we get the taxes and the regulations under control and attract and target businesses that match our geographical advantages and the strengths of our community, I don't see any reason why we should be able to bring jobs that, allow our people to, stay if they want to stay and have a middle class lifestyle.
Yeah. Bring that medium household income up.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, perfect. There's one question I didn't ask yet, but I need to ask before we end.
Okay.
But what is I guess if I could talk today, what are you going to do to control the city manager's budget process? I think that's one question I've heard other people has asked in the past.
Well, we don't have a city manager, so we have the strong mayor model where the mayor is the chief executive of the city. So I'm responsible and my office is responsible for drafting the city's budget. I think that the city actually has some pretty good budget policies in place. The problem is we don't follow them. So I think that we need to have, other candidates have brought this up and I'm not going to disagree with them. We need, long-term strategic planning. And we need to actually take a hard look at making sure that our dollars are going to those projects that are most essential. And then we present a budget to the city council. One thing that's happened in the past that I think shouldn't happen is once a budget is, ratified by the city council, it should not be the discretion of the mayor to make adjustments to that budget after the fact without, again, consulting the city council. I think that has happened in the past. That's something that, multiple members of the council have brought up. And I think that needs to stop. That, if you look at how the mayor's office and the city council is supposed to work, it's supposed to be similar relationship between the president and the Congress. The president doesn't get to choose what's in the budget arbitrarily at the national level, and no chief executive of American government does. There's always a legislative element that is, holds the purse strings. And in our case, that's the city council. And I think that natural separation of powers in our government needs to be respected. And that's something that I'll do.
I like it. Was there any questions I didn't ask that I should have? And if there is, what would be the answer to that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. And like I said, I was a small business owner myself. I owned a small ammunition manufacturing company for a few years. So I understand the pressure the business owners are under to make payroll, make a profit, and make good on your investment. And I just think we need to make that easier for every business owner in Pocatello, whether you're a new company or you've been here for 10, 20 years.
I like it. I like it. Well, thanks for coming on the show with us today, David, and hope you all the best in this upcoming election.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And I didn't say this before, but I always have to say this. We are also sponsored by Fresh Prep. These guys do a fantastic job preparing fresh meals, shipping them to you, or allowing you to have conveniently located pickup locations from Burley all the way to Idaho Falls. You go down on our website and sign up, and you get your first meal for free and a meal to give to someone else of your choosing. So again, thank you, David, and good luck, and we will see you here soon.
Congratulations on spending a couple of minutes getting a little bit smarter, having some fun, and supporting the Idaho business community. If you're feeling the love, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you are.